Welcome. Let's look at how to implement a different kind of movement where the player rotates and moves forwards and backwards. It's often called tank controls, and so I've got a picture of two tanks here, although it works well with spacecraft, asteroids was this type of movement, etc. And I'm going to control the tank on the right-hand side here. And if I press up, it moves forward. If I press left, it rotates around. And when I press up again, it moves forwards again in whatever direction it's facing. So I can move around like this. So that's player one. Let's rig up player two here to do the same thing but with the WASD keys. So I'm going to go in and grab a when the green flag is clicked block, and underneath that I'm going to put a forever block. Now just a reminder in case you don't know that the forever block will run, the code in the forever block will loop through and run 30 times a second, once every frame. And so 30 times a second, it's going to check to see whether we're pressing any buttons, and if we are, how to move. So let's go through and check in a particular frame whether we're pressing any buttons. So we're going to say if, and then grab a sensing block, and grab a, we're doing WASD, so let's do A, which is going to be the left rotation, and D, I'm just looking at my keyboard to make sure I don't get this wrong, D is going to turn it to the right. So how do we rotate something in Scratch? It's actually quite easy. We just go up to the motion blocks here, and if A is pressed, we want it to rotate, turn to the left. How many degrees? Now they're 360 degrees in a full circle, so how many degrees every frame? A frame is very quick, it's only 1/30th of a second. I found the number 10 works quite well. And then we just want to rotate the other way in the case of the D key being pressed. So let's click that, and hopefully this will control the red tank. Yes, so you can see here when I press the A key, the tank rotates around to the left or anti-clockwise, and the D key rotates it clockwise, and that's really nice and smooth. Now that might seem very fast for rotation, but you'll find if you have really slow rotation or realistic rotation, it's very annoying for the player. But you can mess around with those numbers, but they should be the same. In fact, to make sure that they're the same and make them easy to change, I'm just going to go in, and you don't have to do this, but I'm going to create a variable, or I already created one by clicking on make a variable, and I'm created turning speed. And I'm going to, at the start of the program, set turning speed to 10. And then I'm going to just put turning speed in both of those, and whatever I set turning speed to, it will rotate by, and that should work the same way, like that. Good. Okay, so the next thing is, how do we make it move up and down, or move forwards and backwards? So let's duplicate one of these again, right click and duplicate, and if the W key is pressed, that should be forwards. How do we make it go forwards? Well, if we have it pointing in the right way, then we should be able to go to motion and just say move however many steps forwards. I'm going to go with 5. I found that's a good speed. Let's just try that. So I can now move forwards and drive around, which is pretty good. If for some reason you're not moving forwards, or you're not rotating properly, I should say, it's probably because you need to come in and grab this set rotation style, and you want to set it to, at the start of the program, to all around, and that'll actually show the tank turning, because if I set that to something else like don't rotate, then, oops, run the program again, then even though I'm rotating, it won't actually show that on the screen, even though it will go in the different direction, which is really confusing. So you probably want to set that to all around, and you can actually see what you're doing, like that. The final thing is to make it go backwards, and that would be the S key. And in that case, set it to -5, and now I can go backwards as well, which is very useful if you're backed into, or you've driven into a corner or something like that. And I can do the same thing with the turning speed, is before I just made a variable for speed. So I can, at the start, set speed to 5, and then set that to speed. How do I get negative speed? I go in here, grab the multiplication, which is a little star in programming. It doesn't look like a times, it's a bit confusing. And I multiply speed by -1. If you multiply anything by -1, it becomes the negative equivalent. So if the speed is 5, it will become -5. And I will just zoom out a little bit so we can see all of that code. And hopefully there I have some really nice movement, and now I have my 2-player game. Although we can't do anything because there's no collision detection yet, but it's the start of a game. I hope you found that useful.